Hi, I'm Ari, I'm the Oak Witch, and in today's video let's discuss the concept of magic and free will. I am excited for this video because it's a little bit spicy, a little bit juicy. Haven't done a let's discuss in a while, so I figured let's just have a chat, let's have a discussion. I am excited to talk about this topic because it's something I often see talked about. When we're looking at spells, when we're looking at magic, doing magic for ourselves or other people and how it influences those in the situation or around us. This concept of free will, autonomy, infringing on people's autonomy and right to choose and decide for themselves and things like that. There's a lot of discussion that tends to happen around this concept, and there's often some dialogue around this topic which I think is slightly interesting, so I wanted to talk about it today. I would love to hear your thoughts on this topic, so please leave some comments down below. I'm sure many people in the community have divided, perhaps strong opinions on this, so I don't want to cause an argument and I don't want to get hostile, so let's keep it calm, but I'm really interested to have a healthy discussion about how we approach this topic. I'm not going to present myself as having the answer, but it's just a discussion I wanted to open. I always tend to find myself having conversations about this with fellow friends on my Discord server and stuff, so I thought I'd open it up to my audience. One quick note about video quality, I have to apologise because my window's open. I film in an attic room and as many of you may know, there's a heat wave and it's really stuffy on this attic floor room. I have to have the window open because it's way too hot without it on, so I'm really sorry if you can hear noise. But anyway, let's just jump into it. So I think we should probably start with what is magic? When we're talking about how magic affects other people, we need to think about what even is magic anyway. I personally see magic as an influence. Magic is often described as a change in someone's consciousness or a change in a turn of events in a situation, but I always tend to see it more as an influence. Magic is influencing the odds of a situation. So if I'm performing magic for myself or magic for someone else, I am maybe increasing or maybe decreasing the likelihood, the probability or the chances of a particular event, action, something happening, at least most of the time. So this is where this concept of free will comes into play, because what does that mean for people's autonomy when we are manipulating a situation to our will, to our desire? At some level there's going to be a aspect of someone's free will, someone's autonomy being infringed upon or harmed or impacted in some way, whether it be passive or minimally harmful or obviously very harmful. And of course I have to talk about even the concept of free will itself. There's many people that believe we have 100% free will. There's many people that believe that everything is predestined, and I'm not here to tell you what the correct one is, but I think what I would like to mention is that, at least from my perspective, I think the concept of 100% free will is slightly flawed, especially if we're looking at societal structures of white privilege, of male privilege, systems and structures that have been designed within society to benefit particular groups of people as a result of disadvantaging marginalised groups of people. So some people are at a more disadvantage than other people when it comes to individual lives. So I think it is important to acknowledge that, you know, of course some people have more opportunities than others, and this obviously is not fair. So I had to mention that because obviously the whole concept of free will itself is a nuanced discussion, and that is something that is obviously reflected in the pagan community as well, when we're looking at racism as something which exists in the societal larger structure, that is something that is reflected in the microcosm of smaller communities. This is something which is discussed in this book, Bringing Race to the Table, Exploring Racism in the Pagan Community, and in other Crystal Blanton books that I've read, like this one, Shades of Faith, Minority Voices in Paganism. I did a review of this for Patreon, and I've literally, I'm this close to finishing this book. I've just got that much left. And these kind of topics are discussed in here by some really good contributors and authors that shared essays in these anthologies. Really recommend these two books if you are interested in learning about racism and these kind of societal problems that are reflected in the pagan and magical witchcraft community. So just thought I'd quickly shout out those books. But I bring this up because this is why we can see that magic has always been a tool for the marginalised. You can see this throughout so many different cultures across the globe, that magic has been a tool, a method for people to get themselves out of bad situations and unfavourable conditions. And now we can see that magic has obviously reached a much wider audience and is used for many different things by many different people. But I think it's something to at least consider when we are looking at why magic has existed for many different types of people. So I'll run through some of the dialogues that I personally see and why I would perhaps critique their logic. So something which I see a lot is very, very strong stances on doing magic to harm people. So cursing and hexing is something I'll get into a little bit more in a bit, but when we're looking at people who, for example, follow what people call the Wiccan Rede, and ye harm none, do what you will. So doing magic that can only help people, don't do magic that harms people. So when we're looking at that, we may define harm in terms of magic as something which infringes on people's free will, which directly harms someone. And harming here can look like controlling someone or manipulating the conditions in which they are in an unfavourable way. So this is removing someone's choice to live their life in whichever way they wish, right? So that concept of invalidating their free will and their autonomy. So people tend to look at that as we should not do that under any circumstances. We should only do magic which can help a person's situation. But I do think that magic is an influence. It is in any situation or intention influencing a situation and always going to, in some way, manipulate something to your will. And this, in some way, will always kind of influence someone's free will. Let's use some examples. So a really, really common example given when we're looking at spell ideas is the job interview example. So you're looking to get a new job. You need to pay your bills, you need a better salary, and you need a new job. You've done all the CVs, you've gotten an interview, and you're doing the interview, and you might think you need a little bit of magic to boost your chances. So you perform a job spell. The desirable outcome here is to increase your chances of landing this job through magic, and you get the job. So spell's done, spell's worked. And that in itself, people would say, is a really harmless spell because it's something which is beneficial magic and it's for yourself. You're doing magic on yourself and that's fine. If you look at the actual scenario, you are one candidate of likely many that applied for the job and were in the same boat as you. Nervous for the interview, really hoping to land that new job to maybe as well pay their bills and to have a better quality of life. So other people were in the exact same boat as you, but perhaps they didn't have magic on their side. You do. Your spell increased your chances to land that job. As a result, decreased their chances to get the job, which, logically speaking, some would probably say that's pretty harmful. And I'm not even saying that magic should always follow logic or that doing a job spell is an inherently bad or malicious action, because I don't think it is. I've done job spells for myself and for other people, so I'm not making a moral claim here, I'm really not. I'm just perhaps offering a different perspective at a situation which many people find themselves doing magic for, and understanding that in this case many people would probably not really see that as infringing on someone else's free will, because you're doing a spell for yourself and you control your own actions and you can do whatever you want with your life, right? Magic is used to make our lives or other people's lives better, and that's all you were trying to do with the spell. That was all your intention, just to make your own quality of life better through magic. But it does affect other people, because it always will. Life is a web of relationships, of connections, of actions, domino affecting each other and rippling. So of course it's going to affect other people. So when we get into this concept of magic and free will, it is a layered and complex situation. Let's look at another example, which maybe we can juxtapose this with a intention which is seen by many people in the community as perhaps more directly harmful. A love spell. Many people see the use of a love spell to intentionally get somebody to fall in love with you as kind of unethical, because you are controlling and dominating somebody's autonomy, someone's free will to love you, to fall in love with you, which they may not actually be. So it is one of those things which people look at as directly harmful and malicious, perhaps. That is a clear infringement on someone's free will when we're looking at domination magic and outwardly manipulating somebody to do something that maybe they wouldn't usually do. So we can juxtapose these two situations, or these two examples, as infringing on someone's free will, but maybe in more passive ways and in more direct ways. Which is right and which is wrong? Where do we draw the line as to what is unethical and ethical with some caveats? Who knows? That's up for you to decide, really. This is where we get into the concept of hexes and curses. So, is a hex or a curse morally justified in some situations? That's up for you to decide. Many people who follow the Wiccan Rede, or who just have their own personal ethical code when it comes to magic, would say, I would never curse, I would never hex anyone, I would only do beneficial magic, or I would only perform magic which I think would intentionally increase someone's quality of life, despite perhaps any infringements of free will which would happen as a result. Some people would be completely okay with cursing if it was morally justified, if it was the right thing to do. It's completely up for you to decide. We can look at justice magic. Magic done to punish those who have escaped the criminal justice system, which happens far too frequently. I don't want to bring up any sensitive or triggering topics, but I think we can all think of people who directly, intentionally harm anyone through any form, be it physical, mental, and such. So we can see countless examples of that happening, and the victims being left without any compensation. And hexes and curses are done by many different people to punish the person who rightfully deserves it. Of course, hexes and curses directly and maliciously intent harm somebody's quality of life, their autonomy, and their free will. So that is obviously something which is definitive of when we look at hexes and curses. But I wouldn't personally say it's something which is inherently and objectively morally evil. But that's just me. We can also perhaps question the absolutist binary of good and evil when we're looking at performing magic without somebody's consent. Is performing magic without someone's consent inherently bad? It's a tricky conversation. If we're looking at perhaps performing healing magic on someone who's ill but hasn't asked for it, is that a morally bad thing to do? If we're looking at, obviously, curses and hexes, you're not going to ask for somebody's consent to do that. Is that a morally bad thing to do? Especially if we're looking at those examples of hexing an abuser. Is that a morally bad thing to do? It's not like you're going to ask that person before you do it, is it? So, which is right and which is wrong? Is it situation dependent? What do you personally think? Let me know down below. To be fair, many people feel upset when they are met with people saying, oh, I'll pray for you, Or I certainly have felt uncomfortable when some people say that they want to read my energy. And I've had discussions with friends who are creators in the past who've had people in their comments do tarot readings for them. And they've really not enjoyed that. They have not liked that because it's an infringement on their own privacy and their personal space and their boundaries. So doing these things without consent, you know, many people would consider it as unethical, an infringement on their free will. So where do we have those boundaries? Where do we draw the line? And do we consider not gaining someone's permission to perform magic, to do a magical act on somebody or for somebody, morally bad? It is just food for thought, especially when we are advancing our magical practice and we're really coming to grips with how we understand how magic works, how we understand why we are implementing magic into our lives. What are we doing it for? Why do we want to practice magic? Why do we want to be witches, magical practitioners? What are we doing this for? Are we actually performing magic and considering all of the moral implications that happens as a result? I think it is something which we can at least consider and that we should. I don't think we should be morally policing every person's magical action because, like I said before, at least my stance, I don't think that performing magic in itself and as a result influencing people's free will is morally inherently bad. I'm not saying that at all. I don't think doing a job interview spell is a morally bad thing. You can see from my channel that I have given advice for different spells to benefit your life in these situations. I obviously don't think it's a morally bad thing to do, as many magical practitioners, witches, pagans, etc. would say the same. I'm just opening up this conversation because I think it is definitely interesting to look at these examples when we do discuss free will. I'm just saying that there is certainly nuance. Another piece of dialogue which I see commonly expressed, I see it in books, I've seen it on like Twitter, online in the community, where people say they change their spell intentions so that it is like, this is a bad spell intention, but just off the top of my head, I desire this thing if it is for the highest good and doesn't infringe on anyone's free will, which I think is really well-meaning and really lovely if it brings you comfort and if it, you know, makes you feel as though you are asking for these things to happen in your life if it truly does benefit everyone, kind of looking at it from a utilitarian perspective. But I would say, as I've said before in this video, at least from my stance, magic is an influence, and regardless of your intention, I think you are always going to be influencing somebody's free will and manipulating that. I don't think that's an inherently bad thing, but it is something which I think happens just as a definitive aspect of what magic actually is and what it is actually doing. So is that an oxymoron, that intention? I would probably say so. There is so many ethical considerations to talk about when we're looking at magic and free will and people's advantages and disadvantages in, you know, the microcosm of our community and obviously the larger societal structures we live in, particularly in the West, which that is the experience in which I'm coming from, obviously, and I'm really sorry if I've missed out people's conversations, if I've missed out anyone's perspective, because I can unfortunately only really come from my perspective. I can only really come from my perspective as a white mixed British Latina person living in England. So I would love to hear your perspectives and your experiences down below in the comments. I welcome any conversation, and here on these Let's Discusses, I only like to present myself as someone who is constantly learning. I'm constantly improving myself, and I know I can always do better. So I love having these Let's Discusses because I read your comments down below. I always do. I read every single one, and I always like to really absorb in what you guys are saying and your experiences. Whether, you know, it be the mean comments, whether it be the genuine constructive criticism, which I welcome and love and really appreciate, and obviously your really lovely support and positive comments. I appreciate them all Maybe not the mean ones because you're just being mean, but I appreciate both the constructive criticism and obviously your lovely positive comments. So this is obviously a topic which is so nuanced, which is layered with so many different issues and conflicting sides, and I don't think it is useful having this moral absolutism approach. I don't think there is really stuff we can look at as inherently bad when we're looking at magic specifically and how we perform magic in different moral scenarios. So what do you think? Did you enjoy this video? I think that's it for me today. It's getting really hot in here and I need to go cool down with some iced water. So I hope you guys enjoyed this Let's Discuss. It was a bit of a ramble, as my videos always kind of are. So I really appreciate it if you enjoy my rambling. Thank you so much for watching. I thank you all for being here with me on this channel. I just appreciate you so much, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.